7th grade. We're doing chapter 2, section 2 today, as you can see. Not yet. There you go, as you can see. So just to catch you up on where we should be right now, you should have chapter 2, section 1 notes from Monday written down in your notebook. You're going to copy these notes down today. And again, I'm going to attach a copy. If I go too fast on this slideshow, that's fine. You'll have your own copy to write down, but you do need to write it down. And like I told somebody, or I mentioned on the video the other day, it's because that helps you remember things better when you write it down, and because I collect them, which is the part that you probably care about. It's a 100-point grade. So make sure you are writing these down. And like I said, on Monday, if you haven't written them down, you still got time to catch up, because I don't collect these until the week before fall break, which is about a month from now. So you don't have to worry about turning them in right away or right now, but at the end of the 9 weeks, I will be taking those up. You should have filled out your test practice questions from yesterday. That was chapter 2, section 1. I attached those on Google Classroom. I saw at the end of the day yesterday that some of you turned those in, but I haven't gone through them yet. I'm really not going to go through them until it's almost test time, but I will check and see if you turned them in or not. I do have some people that haven't turned anything in basically all year. Not a great strategy. You want to get your grades up. Those of you that have been checking in every day, you've mostly done a really good job. Test scores were, I wouldn't say great, but they were pretty good. Some of you didn't do well, but it's the first test, and I may not know what to expect. Midterms are coming out soon. The grades are due this week, and so your test grade is going to be the big majority of your midterm. And so if you didn't do well on the test, your midterm's not going to be great, but don't get panicked about that. Yeah, we have 2 more tests. We have a notebook, and I'm collecting these study guides each time. So we've got a few hundred more points left for you to get your grade up into a more reasonable spot. Okay. Again, I will attach an attendance question today. I will ask it just some time randomly in the middle of the video. Like I said, I don't want to ask them right at the beginning every time or right at the end every time, because I don't want people just skipping to that part to get to the question. But anyway, so let's talk about chapter 2, section 2, which, as you can see, is early exploration. When we left off in section 1, Europeans, specifically Italians, are really getting ready to see what is out there in the world. And again, it's not like it's very different back then than it is now. There's no Google Maps or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you can't today, like, hey, we're going to go explore what's in the north. It's Cesar, like everybody already knows. You can look it up on Google Maps, like, oh, there's the custard stand, and so there's a lot less. And when I say a lot less, I mean basically zero uncharted territory nowadays. I mean, you could say, well, there are new islands popping up due to volcanic activity, and that's true, but we find out about those pretty quickly. But back then, they didn't know what the entirety of the earth really contained. And as you can see right here, that's very true, because they only thought Europe, Asia, and Africa existed. And so 2 of the 7 continents on our planet Earth, North America, South America, and really Australia and Antarctica when you think about it, but for our purposes, we're talking basically about the Americas. They didn't even know existed. And so the idea that some of them are having is they want to get to Asia. Basically, and Asia is a huge continent with lots of different cultures and civilizations. A lot of people just think of China and Japan and maybe Korea when you think of Asia. But, Iraq and Iran and India, of course, are all in Asia. Actually, India is basically so big on the bottom there, they call that its own subcontinent. But technically speaking, it is in Asia. So, but the idea that they wanted to do was to go west to get east. In other words, they wanted to take their boats and go this way, and then here they come and get back to where they're going from this side, like Pac-Man, the old video game where he goes off the screen, waka, 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 and then he comes back to the other side of the screen, waka, 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 waka. That's the idea. So they feel like they're being overcharged by Arab merchants, and they want to basically just cut out the middleman. Like, we're going to travel to China, Japan, which was at that time called Sipangu, and just trade directly instead of getting these markups with these Arab traders. Okay, attendance question before we go on to the next slide. Here we go. I want your best guess of how many desks, student desks, maybe, I don't know how good my camera work was there. How many student desks are in my room right now? Okay. I'll give you a hint. There's more than one, and there's less than 500. Probably could have guessed that anyway. Okay, but your best guess. How many desks? So you need to write in the form that I'm attaching. Okay. I think there are 43 desks in your room. I think there are 3 desks in your room. Whatever. Okay. Just a guessing game. All right. So this is Italy up here. Obviously, this is in I think Portuguese, actually, maybe Spanish. I'm on a 355-day streak on Duolingo learning Spanish, but I don't, I'm not caught up yet. But this is Europe. This is Portugal on the edge of the Iberian Peninsula here. And then you got Spain and France. And so this is Lisbon, as it says there, Lisboa, which is in their language. But they're sailing further and further and further and further down the west coast of Africa until, as you're going to see in the next slide, they get pushed around the edge. Okay, and so this is called the Gold Coast of Africa. The reason it was called the Gold Coast, and I'm sorry if you're watching this pretty early in the morning because this might blow your mind. The reason it was called the Gold Coast is because there was a lot of gold. They had a lot of gold. They had gold everywhere. And so European explorers were like, I'm going to go get this gold. And the African kingdoms were like, I don't care. You can have the gold. It's literally pretty much everywhere here. There's mines everywhere. And so they go and they trade silks and spices and perfumes and stuff that we talked about in section 1. And they're just getting rich off this gold trade. And so they keep pushing further and further and further and further down the west coast of Africa until Bartholomew is how that's pronounced. You can call him Bart, Diaz. Okay. And I'm just going to tell you right now for tests, last names are fine. Okay. If you just put Diaz, when I ask you what was the name of the Portuguese dude, the blah, 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 that got pushed around the southern tip of Africa, you put Diaz, that's fine. If you put Bart, that's not. There's a lot of dudes named Bart. It's not Bart Simpson, Bartholomew Diaz. Okay. The only exception, if there's 2 or more people with the same last name, then you got to specify. If I ask you, who was the president during the beginning of World War II, and you put Roosevelt, that's technically true, but that's not going to get you credit because there's Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt. You'll need to put Franklin Roosevelt or, FDR or whatever. So you get the idea. Last names are good on tests, but first names are not. So basically, they're sailing down the west coast of Africa. There's a huge monstrous storm. Almost kills them all, and it pushes them around the tip of Africa. I know you're not done writing this down, but you could see, okay, they get pushed around the edge here, and they realize there's a new route to India in. And so Bartholomew Diaz names it the Port of Storms. He's like, the Port of Storms. We almost died. And he goes back to the Portuguese. He's like, oh my God, bro, there's a terrible storm. We got pushed around. Well, I named it the Cape of Storms. And the king is like, whoa, we're renaming it the Cape of Good Hope. And he's like, bro, we lost a lot of guys out there. I don't think you're listening to my story. He's like, well, I don't really care. Now we know we can get there from going this way or there from going that way. You get the idea. And so we now know that we can go the long way, or, we can go around the coast of Africa to get there without having to go overland, because as you can see, they're trying to get basically over here. Okay. And so they used to have to cross all the way and then sail across the Mediterranean, then cross all this land. There's mountain ranges, forests. All kinds of, there's not freeway highways then either. So you've got to really work to get across overland. So now water, this is why shipping, when you order something Amazon Prime or whatever, that's why shipping is called shipping, because it used to be the best way to ship something was on a ship. Okay. So Vasco da Gama sailed this new route, and he was the first one to technically find his way from Europe around the southern tip, the Cape of Good Hope or Storms, depending on your point of view, and into Asia. And so basically they cut their travel time way down, and their profits just went up and 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 up. They're making more and more money. Even if you don't have necessarily more or different goods to ship. They are shipping what they do in about a fraction of the time. I don't want to say half because I don't know exactly off the top of my head how much they cut down the shipping time, but it was by a lot. Okay. And so a trip that might have taken this many days now takes this many days. And so you can take more trips. And so even if you don't have necessarily a new area of trade to invest in, you can at least trade the stuff you're already trading faster. And so they're making a lot of money. All right, and this gets us to Columbus. Now, Columbus has become a complicated figure in American history. There are a lot of towns in America named after Columbus. Some of you are sitting right now in the only town named after his first name in America. Most of the towns in America named after Columbus are called Columbus, but we named ours Christopher. A lot of places want to change those names. A lot of places want to stop honoring Columbus and name, Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm on board with that. Columbus, I think, was a very troublesome figure. He never, even his biggest fans will tell you, he never stepped foot on what we now call the United States. He landed in the islands south of us, and what we now call the Caribbean islands, which we'll get to in a second. But Columbus, by his own words, was very problematic. He wrote that he was, he killed lots of people, and he mistreated a lot of Native American women and things like that. And this is not my opinion. This is not me saying like what. This is what he literally wrote down in his diary. And so Columbus, people get a lot of things wrong about his voyage. The idea that you're taught like in kindergarten a lot of times is that everybody thought the earth was flat. And Columbus was the only one that was like, no, I'm going to sail this way and get this way. And everybody was like, you're going to fall off the side of the earth and go, blah. But no, that's not really true. Most educated people, by the time the 1490s came around, by the time the 1400s to begin with came around, were like, Columbus was like, the earth is round. And everybody's like, bro, we know. Yeah, duh. And so Columbus was going to sail west from wherever would allow him to sail. And he was going to try to get to, again, Cipangu, or what we now call Japan. And so he was Italian, and he tried to get Italy to give him money for the voyage, and they said no. And finally he went to Spain, and Ferdinand and Isabella were the king and queen, and they were like, yeah, we'll give you money for these voyages. Giving money for voyages back then was a very common thing for kings and queens because they had so much money, they didn't a few boats and supplies for a few months was nothing to them. It was basically like the change that's lost in your couch cushions right now. But if it worked, they could get literally millions of dollars in new goods from new places. And if it didn't work, it was the crew of the ships that were paying for it and dying with their lives, not them. And so they would ship people off over and over and over and be like, he didn't come back, or he did, and now I'm rich. And so Columbus, of course, sails with the Nina da Pinta and the Santa Maria. And, you'll read in your book tomorrow. It's pretty funny, but like Columbus wrote in his diary, among all the other troublesome things, like, when he sailed off, he's like, it's going to be a couple weeks. And like a couple months went by, and like they knocked on his door, and he's like, hello. And he's like, hey, it's me, Bob from I don't know if his name is Bob, I'm just making that up, from the crew downstairs. And we're just going to let you know that this is terrible, and we're going to throw you off the edge of the boat because we've been sailing. We're way farther than home than you said we were going to be. And, we're just going to kill you and go back pretty soon. Just giving you a little heads up. And Columbus is like, oh, no, which you can see why. And so people were pretty gullible back then, though. So basically what he did is he went to the logs that they kept of their mileage or knots, whatever they call it, sailing. I'm not a sailor, obviously. And, it's like, oh, we're 500 miles from home. And he basically scratched it out, but like, oh, no, look, we're only 100 miles. And they were like, okay. And then they let him live. And so anyway, after a long time, much longer than they expected, they ran into what we now call the Bahamas. And so, again, not only did Columbus not land in the United States. Columbus wasn't even close to where he thought. When he landed, he called the people there Indians. He thought he was in the East Indies. He literally thought he was in India. You can look at Google Maps. India and the Americas are not close. Okay, if you're looking at the little globe around my head here, if this were where America is, India like way over here. It's literally almost impossible to miss by more. And so he was like, India. And the Native Americans there were like, bro, no, this is not Indian. He's like, shut up, you're Indians. And so we called them Indians for like 400 years. It's only now that we start calling them, I say now, the last few decades, we've started calling them Native Americans or Indigenous Americans, which is what we should call, because we're not in India, we're in America. And so, and that's before you get into the idea of discovering something. If there were hundreds of thousands of people here already, you can't really claim that you discovered it, especially when you can, people are saying, well, he discovered it for Europe. That's not strictly speaking true either. Vikings had been here hundreds of years before. They just pieced out and gone back. So I can't knock on your door tonight and be like, I've discovered this house, and walk into your kitchen and I discovered leftover pizza and I claim it for Batstopia. You would pretty soon call the police, and rightfully so. And so that's not even getting into all the troublesome things that he did that, I'm not going to, you're in seventh grade. I'm not going to get into all that. But that's just the basics of the story, that it's, you can't necessarily discover something that's already been discovered. So he made a few more trips, but you could see he sailed from Spain. And when he came back, winds blew him north back into, or he sailed, from Spain. I said right. And then he blew back into Portugal. And when he landed in Portugal, which you remember from a couple slides ago, was the country that didn't allow, you're not going to discover anything. It must have been pretty satisfied to show up and be like, oh, hey, Portuguese king and queen, look what's up. I got 3 boats full of just crazy loot. But anyway, he made other voyages a year later, and in 1498 and in 1502, and he explored the Caribbean islands, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba. Like I said, he never came to Florida. He never came anywhere on the mainland of what we now call the United States at all. And so even if you are one of the people that are like, hey, we need to, it was a different time and people did different things. And so we should forgive Columbus for the bad things he did, which I'm not necessarily sure I subscribe to. A lot of people were alive during that time and didn't do those things. So, there's still criminals and non-criminals today. But like I said, you could Google Columbus's own diary and look at the things that he did that are wrong. If you're not, that's fine. But even, the idea that he discovered the United States is not, doesn't ring true at all, because he never stepped foot in the United States by any means. So Spain and Portugal were arguing over, you've done this before, like, hey, how are we going to split up the new land? Like, you may have siblings and you're like, hey, you've got this candy bar, and you break it apart. And then you're like, oh, that's not half. And you're like, well, I get the bigger half. I'm like, well, that's not what the word half means. And so this is what happened with the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494. Basically, Spain and Portugal drew an imaginary line down the middle of the ocean, like 2 siblings fighting over a room. Like, you don't step on my side of the room, I'm going to step on yours. And then, one of the countries was like, well, we're not getting enough in this deal. And the other side was like, it's fair, and blah, 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 blah. And so later on, they signed the line of demarcation, or the Treaty of Tordesillas. The Pope changed the line and moved it. Now, this is going to cause problems, because England and Italy and some other countries are going to be like, whoa, wait a second. Why don't we get any of this? And so this is going to cause a lot of tension, of course, and fighting. So Ferdinand Magellan famously he gets credit, which this is a bummer, because he sailed with close to 60 people, and I don't know, a dozen of them came back. He was not one of them. He got killed in a fight in the Philippines. And so he still gets credit for being the first person to sail around the world, even though he wasn't on the boat when they got back, which is a weird thing. They count the captain as the person that gets it done, no matter who actually makes it back. But you'll read in your book tomorrow, they were eating sawdust and rats and belt leather by the time they got back, because they ran out of stuff. But they made it back. It must have really been hard to be one of the people that actually made it. One of the 12 or 19, I don't remember the exact number, people that made it back on the boats. And they're like, Magellan had died 2 months ago, and he gets back and they're like, Magellan did it. And like, well, no, Magellan's dead. I'm here and I'm eating sawdust, and like maybe write my name down. My name's Jerry or whatever. They're like, no, it's Magellan. And so like now in our history book, we don't know any of those guys' names, but we know Magellan. So there he is. He's the first person. The word is circumnavigate. It means to sail around. He sailed around the Earth, not the globe. A globe is just a little thing that goes on our desk, but the entire Earth. So don't forget to answer the attendance question in the form that I provided you. Don't forget to wear your mask if you go out, wash your hands, and all that good stuff. You will probably see me again on Friday in video form. And have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you later. Bye.